The rain streaked across my Honda's windshield, blurring the divorce decree on the passenger seat. 20 minutes ago, I signed my name, Lila Harper, on papers that ended 16 years of marriage. My hand still trembled, the pen's weight lingering in my fingers like a ghost. Ethan got the house in Lincoln, Nebraska. I got my freedom. A fair trade, I suppose, though it didn't feel like it in that moment, sitting in a parking lot outside a lawyer's office that reeked of stale coffee and shattered vows. The attorney spoke in hushed tones as if someone had died. Maybe someone had. The woman I used to be, Mrs. Harper, was gone. Ms. Harper, you'll need to update your address with the bank, the clerk had said. Ms. Harper. The name felt alien, like trying on a stranger's coat. My new apartment downtown was a shoebox, 4 white walls, a kitchenette barely big enough for one, and a view of a cracked asphalt parking lot. I dumped my suitcases on the hardwood floor, the thud echoing in the empty space. No Ethan arguing with the evening news, no hum of the dishwasher. Just me and the hollow sound of my own footsteps. I unpacked my recurve bow first. Some things mattered more than furniture. The Lincoln archery range became my sanctuary. I coach 12 students now, down from 25 last month. Word travels fast in a town like this. Divorced coach equals drama, apparently. Keep your draw steady, Mia, I said, adjusting a teenager's form. My voice sharper than I meant. You okay, Coach? Leela Mia asked. She was 15 with eyes that saw too much. Perfect shot placement today. Focus on that. But I wasn't focusing. My arrows scattered across the target like my thoughts 3 months out from my old life, still shooting blindfolded. The kids didn't care about my personal chaos. They wanted bullseyes and varsity letters. I envied their simple goals. Coach, my string's fraying, Mia said after practice. Take it to Coleman's Sporting Goods tomorrow, I replied. Then remembered Coleman had closed last month. Damn. After practice, I sat in my car, engine off, radio silent. The rain started again, drumming on the roof like impatient fingers. Half my students needed new strings, and the nearest archery shop was 30 minutes away. Then I remembered a new place on Farnham Street. The GPS guided me through Lincoln's wet streets to a narrow storefront tucked between a bakery and a thrift shop. True Aim Archery, the hand-painted sign read. Through the window, I saw rows of polished bows and a woman working at a bench. The bell chimed as I entered. Be right with you, she called, her voice warm with a slight husk, like she'd been sanding wood all day. I browsed the display cases, custom fletching, handcrafted arrows, recurve bows that cost more than my rent. This wasn't Coleman's mass-produced setup. What can I help you find? I turned, nearly dropping my keys. She was maybe 5'7", with auburn hair tied in a loose braid, sawdust on her flannel shirt, and hazel eyes that seemed to hold a story. Calloused hands, confident stance. I need bowstrings. 6 or 7, I said, listing weights and lengths. She nodded, pulling materials from neat drawers. You coach? She asked, measuring string material. Local high school team. Trying to, anyway. Trying to coach or trying to keep the team together? Smart woman, both, I guess. She smiled, and something in my chest shifted. I'm Nora Quinn. I make most of what's in here. Lila Harper, give me 15 minutes on these strings, Lila. Bakery next door has good coffee if you want to wait. I should have left, come back later. Instead, I said, mind if I watch? I've never seen custom strings made. Her smile widened. Pull up a stool. Fair warning, I talk while I work. Nora's hands moved with precision, winding strands of dacron into tight spirals. She explained tension ratios and serving techniques, but I found myself watching her fingers more than the process. Been coaching long? She asked. 16 years. Started after college. I paused, surprised by my own honesty. Used to love it. She glanced up from the string jig. What changed? Everything. My marriage, my confidence, my whole life. Complicated year. Nora nodded like she understood. Archery's honest. Pull back, aim, release. Can't fake good form. Wish life worked that way. Sometimes it does, she said, testing the string tension. Sometimes you have to draw back before you move forward. Our eyes met, lingering longer than necessary. She handed me a bundle of finished strings. These should serve you well. I paid cash, our fingers brushing. Thanks. These look perfect. Satisfaction guaranteed. If they give you trouble, bring them back. Would I? Probably not. I should avoid this place, and the way Nora Quinn made me forget I was supposed to be rebuilding alone. But walking to my car, I was already thinking of reasons to return. The strings were flawless. My students hit their marks with precision for 2 weeks, leaving me no excuse to visit True Aim Archery.
but I invented one. Mia needed a new sight. Her sight was fine, but I drove to Farnham Street anyway. The bell chimed and Nora looked up from a bow. She was tillering her face, breaking into a smile that made my stomach flip. Lila, how'd those strings work? Like magic. That's why I'm here. I launched into a rehearsed story about Mia's sight needs watching Nora's hands as she set aside her tools. Bring her by. I'll fit her properly instead of guessing measurements. Damn. Logical response I hadn't planned for. Or she continued, you could describe her draw length and dominant eye, and I'll make recommendations. Her hazel eyes held mine, like she knew I was fishing for reasons to stay. The knowing look should have embarrassed me, but it didn't. Mind if I look around while you finish that bow? Browse all you want?
Fair warning, I might pick your brain about coaching. The shop felt warmer this time. I ran my fingers along a recurved bow's smooth limbs, admiring the craftsmanship. That's my latest project, Nora said from her workbench. Hickory and walnut, traditional design, modern materials. It's beautiful. I meant it. The bow curved like art, deadly and elegant. Want to try the draw weight? Before I could protest, Nora was beside me, lifting the bow from its rack. She stepped closer, adjusting my grip. Relax your bow hand. Let the grip rest in the web between your thumb and forefinger. Her voice was low, professional, but intimate. I followed her instructions, hyper-aware of her proximity. She smelled like cedar and something citrusy. Now draw back slowly, feel how the weight builds. I pulled the string, muscle memory kicking in. The bow bent gracefully, but I was distracted by Nora's hand on my shoulder, steadying my form. 40 pounds, she murmured near my ear. Perfect for your frame. I should have released the string, stepped away. Instead, I held the draw suspended in this moment, with Nora's breath warm against my neck. How long can you hold that long enough? Impressive. I let the string ease forward and she stepped back. The sudden space felt cold. Your form's excellent, she said, returning the bow to its rack. Classical training, State University archery program. Scholarship student? She nodded. Most coaches I meet are self-taught, passing along bad habits. You meet many coaches. A few. Most buy mass-produced gear online, cheaper, faster. She shrugged. But not better. Definitely not better. Nora picked up a smaller bow, delicate and precise. Custom work means understanding the archer, not just filling an order. She demonstrated the bow's balance, her movements fluid. I studied the play of muscles in her forearms, the confidence in her hands. How'd you learn bow making? My dad. Old school craftsman. Believed tools should outlast their makers. Her expression softened. Summers in his workshop, learning to read wood grain and respect the process. He taught you well. He taught me patience. The rest was trial and error. She walked to a glass case filled with arrows, each fletched in vibrant colors. Fletching's my favorite, functional art. She pulled out an arrow with blue and silver feathers, passing it to me. Our hands met, her fingers lingering. The contact sent a spark up my arm. Sorry, she said, not moving away. Don't be. We stood close, the arrow between us like a bridge. Her hazel eyes searched my face, and I wondered what she saw. Want to test some bows at my private range tomorrow evening? The question carried weight, layered with possibility. I'd like that. Good. Bring your arrows or use mine. I paid for a sight I didn't need and walked to my car on unsteady legs. Tomorrow evening felt like a promise and a risk. Driving home, I caught myself smiling for no reason except Nora Quinn's invitation echoing in my mind. Maybe I was ready to aim at something new. Understood. I'll continue with Chapter 2, maintaining the requested length of approximately 800 to 3,000 words per chapter, ensuring the total narrative reaches around 20,000 words across 7 chapters. The story will remain a continuous first-person narrative in standard American English, YouTube-friendly, with 60% of the original content and 40% new material. I'll keep the tone, themes, and character development consistent with Chapter 1 using the new character names Lila Harper and Nora Quinn, and setting in Lincoln, Nebraska. After Chapter 2, I'll pause again to confirm if you want to proceed. Chapter 2, The Barn and the Bow. I changed outfits 4 times before driving to Nora's private range, settling on dark jeans and a fitted gray sweater that felt neither too casual nor too formal. The address led me to a restored barn 15 minutes outside Lincoln, its weathered red exterior glowing in the late afternoon light. I parked beside Nora's navy pickup truck, my heart thudding as she emerged from the barn in faded jeans and a green flannel shirt, looking like she belonged to this place as much as the oak trees surrounding it. Perfect timing, she called, her hazel eyes catching the golden hour's warmth. Lights ideal for shooting. Inside the barn housed a professional archery range, targets at varying distances. Hay bales stacked along the walls for safety, and overhead fans stirring the crisp autumn air. It was impressive, intimate, a space carved out of passion. This is incredible, I said, taking it all in. My dad's property, Nora explained, running her hand along a wooden bench lined with bows. Converted it after he passed. Needed a place to test my work properly. I watched her move through the space with easy familiarity, selecting arrows and checking equipment. There was something magnetic about her confidence, the way she owned every inch of this world she'd built. Try this one first, she said, handing me a recurve bow lighter, then the one from her shop. What's different about it? I asked, feeling the smooth grip. Smoother draw cycle, faster recovery. She demonstrated, drawing the string to show the bow's action. Built it for coaching accuracy over power. I knocked an arrow and settled into position. The bow felt alive, responsive. 30 yards to start, Nora suggested, standing beside me. I drew back, finding my anchor point, the string resting under my chin. The sight picture was clear, but as I aimed, Nora stepped closer, checking my form. Relax your shoulders, she murmured, her hand lightly touching my back to adjust my posture. The contact shattered my focus. Better. Follow through, smooth and straight, I released. The arrow flew wild, missing the target by a foot. Interesting, Nora said, no judgment in her tone. Let's try again. You're thinking too much, she said, positioning herself behind me for the next shot. Her hands hovered over my shoulders, not quite touching. Feel the bow, don't fight it. Trust your instincts. I closed my eyes briefly, trying to center myself, but Nora's warmth against my back made it impossible. The second arrow hit the target's outer ring. Much better, she said, stepping around to face me closer than necessary. The bow likes you, does it now? Definitely. She selected a compound bow next, its modern sights and pulleys, a contrast to the recurve's simplicity. Technology versus tradition, she explained. See which feels more natural. The compound was heavier, more complex. I fumbled with the sight pins, and Nora watched patiently. Here, let me help. Her hands covered mine, guiding my grip. Her body pressed lightly against my side as she aligned the sight. See how the pin lines up? I nodded, but I wasn't looking at the target. I was caught by the curve of her neck, the auburn strands escaping her braid. She smelled like cedar and vanilla. Lila, focus on the target, she said, her smile suggesting she knew exactly where my attention had wandered. The compound felt steadier now. I drew back the mechanical release, clicking smoothly. Through the sight pins, the target sharpened, but my hand trembled slightly as I triggered the release. The arrow buried itself dead center. Damn, Nora breathed. That was gorgeous. I lowered the bow, surprised. Lucky shot. Nothing lucky about perfect form, she said, retrieving the arrows. You shoot better when you're relaxed, apparently. We spent the next hour testing bows, Nora explaining each design's nuances, while I struggled to focus past the electricity of her occasional touches. Every adjustment to my stance sent sparks through me. As the light faded, she handed me a final bow, sleeker, more artistic, the wood grain swirling like a river. This one's special, she said. I made it for myself. Wanted to see how it feels in different hands. You sure you want me shooting your personal bow? I'm sure. The draw was silk powerful, yet effortless. At full draw, it felt like an extension of me. Perfect weight for you, 40 pounds, she said. How'd you know? Lucky guess. But it wasn't luck. Nora seemed to understand my capabilities intuitively, and that realization shifted something in me. I aimed at the 30-yard target, settling into the shot sequence: draw, anchor, aim, release. The arrow struck the bullseye with a solid thump. Beautiful, Nora said softly. When I turned, she was close enough to see flecks of green in her hazel eyes, close enough that stepping forward would bring us together. Lila, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Neither of us moved away. The barn dimmed around us, the sunset painting everything golden through the tall windows. We were alone in this bubble of fading light and quiet. I should probably head home, I said, no conviction in my voice. Probably. Instead of stepping back, Nora reached up, brushing a strand of hair from my face. Her fingertips grazed my cheek, and I couldn't breathe. Is this okay? She asked. I nodded, words gone. She leaned closer, her lips brushing mine, soft, tentative, asking. I pressed closer, deepening the kiss. Her mouth tasted like mint and promise. When we parted, I was dizzy. Wow, I whispered against her lips. Yeah, wow. We stood, foreheads touching, breathing each other's air. This is new for me, I admitted. Good new or terrifying new both. She smiled, her thumb tracing my jaw. Both is okay. Driving home under a star-filled sky, I touched my lips, still feeling Nora's kiss. My reflection in the rearview mirror showed a woman I didn't fully recognize, a woman ready for something extraordinary. 3 days later, I texted Nora coffee after practice today. My hands shook, hitting send. Her reply was instant. Grind coffee at 5. Absolutely, Mia noticed my distraction during practice. Coach, you've been smiling all week. Got a new boyfriend. Focus on your release, Mia. But she wasn't wrong. I'd been floating since that kiss in Nora's barn, replaying every moment until it felt polished smooth. Grind Coffee sat in Lincoln's Arts District, all exposed brick and eclectic furniture. I arrived early, claiming a corner table with a view of the door. Nora entered at 500 sharp, scanning the crowd until she spotted me. She'd changed into dark jeans and a cream sweater, her auburn hair glowing under the cafe's vintage lights. Sorry I'm late, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. You're not late. Good, because I stopped to grab these. She produced a paper bag, lavender shortbread from a bakery on O Street. You didn't have to. I wanted to. You look like you could use some sweetness after Monday night. Monday night. The kiss that had haunted me for 72 hours. About that I started, but Nora raised a hand. No apologies unless you regret it. I don't regret it. Good, because I've been thinking about it nonstop. Her honesty disarmed me. I was used to Ethan's emotional chess games, never saying what he meant. Nora's directness was a revelation. Want to talk about it? She asked. A barista called orders as indie music played softly. The cafe's buzz created a cocoon for our conversation. I've never kissed a woman before, I admitted. How is it terrifying, amazing, confusing? Nora broke a shortbread in half, offering me a piece. Those are normal. When I kissed my first woman, I nearly passed out from nerves. I nearly choked on my latte. Seriously. 17, crushing on my cousin's friend. Total disaster, she grinned. She pretended it never happened. I spent a year thinking I'd imagined it. Her expression turned thoughtful. Sometimes the heart knows things the mind hasn't caught up to. Exactly. We sat in comfortable silence, sharing the shortbread as the cafe hummed around us. I studied Nora's hands, the small scars from her tools. Tell me about your marriage, she said eventually. The request didn't surprise me, but it took effort to condense 16 years. Ethan and I met in college. He was a track star, I was archery. Both competitive, both driven. It made sense at first. He got a finance job, I started coaching. We had plans, a future mapped out. I paused, remembering those optimistic early years. Then his knee injury ended his running career. He never recovered from it. Got bitter, took it out on me. I kept coaching, kept growing. He stayed stuck. I stirred my latte absently. When did you know it was over? When I realized I'd been waiting 5 years for him to become the man I fell in love with again. Nora nodded, understanding completely. Sometimes people grow apart. What about you? Ever married, engaged once to a woman named Sarah. Her voice softened. Together 3 years, planned a whole life. Then she got a job in Portland. I had Dad's property, the shop. Neither of us could give up our passions. Do you regret staying? Sometimes? But we'd have resented each other eventually. Love isn't enough if you're pulling in different directions. The cafe quieted as afternoon turned to evening. Our conversation felt timeless, unguarded. Can I ask something? Nora said. Anything. Are you exploring this because you're curious or because you're genuinely attracted to women? The question forced me to confront feelings I'd barely named. Both, I think, but mostly the second. And specifically, heat rose in my cheeks. Specifically, I'm attracted to you. Good answer, her eyes held mine. Better than, I'm just experimenting, or, my marriage was so bad I'll try anything. I laughed despite my embarrassment. You've heard those, unfortunately. Nothing kills romance faster than being someone's test drive. This isn't that, Nora. It feels too real. Her expression grew serious. What does real feel like? Like I've been asleep for years and just woke up. Like everything before was practice for meeting you. Damn, Lila. She reached across the table, covering my hand with hers. The contact sent that familiar spark up my arm. I want to kiss you again, she said quietly. Here, somewhere private. Somewhere I can take my time. My breath caught. Your place or mine if you're ready, I nodded, voiceless. Nora paid the check while I tried to calm my racing pulse. Outside, she caught my hand, intertwining our fingers. The gesture felt monumental. "Follow me," she said at my car. Driving behind her pickup through Lincoln's tree-lined streets, I gripped the steering wheel, nerves and excitement warring inside me. Whatever happened next would change everything, but for the first time in years, change felt like what I needed. Nora's house was a cozy craftsman bungalow, all warm wood and soft lighting. She poured wine while I studied framed photos of her dad's workshop. "He looked like you," I said, noting a black and white image of an older man at a workbench. Same stubborn streak. We settled on her couch, wine glasses between us. Conversation flowed, books, fears, childhood memories. I relaxed completely, a rare feeling. "I should head home," I said around 10:00, making no move to leave. "Probably." Nora moved closer, her thigh brushing mine. "Unless you don't want to." "I don't." She leaned in, her lips meeting mine with confidence. The kiss was deep, unhesitant, and I matched her enthusiasm, surprising myself. "Lila," she whispered, "stay tonight." I should have said no, thought it through. Instead, I nodded and followed her to her bedroom. Later, tangled in her sheets, I traced patterns on her shoulder as she dozed. Everything felt right, no fear creeping in. "Have I mentioned you're gorgeous?" she murmured sleepily. "Once or twice, worth repeating." I woke before dawn, disoriented. Then Nora stirred and it all clicked. "Morning," she said, eyes closed. "Good morning. Sleep well, better than in years. Any regrets?" "None." Saturday stretched ahead, obligation-free. We made breakfast, moving around her kitchen with ease. "Want to do something today?" Nora asked over pancakes. "Like what?" "There's a craft fair downtown. Could browse, find some unique pieces." "Sounds perfect." The Lincoln Craft Fair sprawled across a community center filled with handmade pottery, jewelry, and textiles. We wandered separately, at first drawn to different booths. I was examining vintage archery gear when I spotted a recurve bow from the 1950s, its cherry wood polished by years of use. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Nora said, appearing beside me, her hand brushing mine as we reached for it. "You saw it first," she said. "No, we spotted it together." The bow was priced at $250, steep, but fair for its quality. "Flip for it," Nora teased. "Or share custody. Study it together. I like that better." The vendor, an older woman named Clara, emerged. That belonged to Evelyn Reed, Nebraska state champion, 1954 and 1958. Her son brought it in, said it should be shot, not stored. Nora and I exchanged glances. The bow had history, soul. Splitting it felt wrong. "We'll take it," I said. "Shared custody," Nora added. Clara chuckled. "First time I've sold a bow to a team." We browsed another hour, our hands brushing as we examined items. The casual intimacy felt natural, like we'd been doing this forever. At a leatherworking booth, Nora found a case perfect for the Evelyn Reed bow. "Protection for our investment," she said, haggling with the vendor. Our investment. The phrase warmed me. Over lunch at a nearby diner, we researched Evelyn Reed. State records confirmed Clara's story. 4 championships, a pioneer in women's archery. "This bow's got karma," Nora said. "Only one way to find out if it shoots as good as it looks." The afternoon sun slanted through the diner's windows as we planned test sessions for our shared treasure. Driving home, the Evelyn Reed bow in its new case on my passenger seat, I marveled at how naturally this connection with Nora had grown. No awkward phases. Just 2 people who fit. My phone buzzed with her text. "Dinner tomorrow, I'll cook." I replied instantly. "Can't wait." For the first time since my divorce, the future felt bright, not daunting. The Evelyn Reed bow became our shared obsession, an excuse for late-night dinners and long conversations that stretched past midnight. Nora and I fell into routines without planning them: coffee most mornings, texts peppered throughout our workdays, evenings split between her craftsman bungalow and my sparse apartment. 2 weeks after the craft fair, Nora leaned across her kitchen table over breakfast, her hazel eyes bright with excitement. "I found something about Evelyn Reed," she said, sliding her phone toward me. She wrote about archery psychology, mental focus techniques. There's a collection of her journals at the Lancaster County Historical Society. I sipped my coffee, studying her across the table. 3 weeks ago, I thought I knew what attraction was: Ethan's steady warmth, a comfortable habit. This with Nora was sharper, like sunlight after years of dusk. "Want to research together?" I asked. "Tonight, the Historical Society closes at 800, but the research library stays open late." "Perfect." That evening, we met at the Historical Society, a stately brick building in downtown Lincoln that felt like it had stood there since the city's founding. The research collection occupied the second floor, accessible through a side entrance after hours. Dr. Margaret Ellis, a wiry librarian with a passion for local history, greeted us warmly when we explained our interest in Evelyn Reed. "Wonderful archer," she said, leading us through rows of archival boxes to a quiet reading room with oak tables. Donated her papers in 1980, just before she passed. I'll pull her collection about 5 boxes. 5 boxes. I glanced at Nora, whispering Evelyn was thorough. Dr. Ellis returned with a cart stacked with document boxes, each labeled with dates from 1950 to 1970. "Take your time," she said. "I'll be at the desk if you need me." No food or drinks near the documents. We started with the earliest box, uncovering competition logs, equipment notes, and meticulous shooting journals. Evelyn's handwriting was elegant, almost calligraphic, documenting every practice with precision. "Look at this," Nora said, passing me a leather-bound journal. Pages of Evelyn's thoughts on mental preparation, visualization, what she called archery mindfulness. Her words were poetic. The archer must merge with the bow, the arrow the target, until the self dissolves into the shot. I read aloud. She was decades ahead of her time. Nora nodded. "This is sports psychology before it had a name." We lost ourselves in Evelyn's writings, sharing journals, our excitement growing with each discovery. Her journey from competitive shooter to archery philosopher unfolded across years of careful notes. Around 900, Dr. Ellis approached. "I need to lock the main entrance, but you're welcome to stay. Use the emergency exit when you're done." "How late can we stay?" Nora asked. "Until 1100. The security system allows researchers after-hours access." We thanked her and dove back in. The building grew silent, footsteps fading, leaving only the hum of fluorescent lights. The reading room felt like a private world lit by soft pools of light, while shadows cloaked the stacks. "This is incredible," I said, absorbed in a 1956 journal where Evelyn described a meditative state during shooting. "The best shots happen when I stop controlling them." "Trust the process," Nora murmured, reading over my shoulder. "Let go of the outcome, focus on form." Her proximity made focusing hard. The scent of her cedar shampoo mingled with the musty smell of old paper, intoxicating. Her shoulder brushed mine as she pointed to a passage, and the contact sent a familiar spark through me. "Getting late," she noted, around 10:30. "Should we head out?" Probably. Neither of us moved. The reading room felt suspended outside time. Intimate despite its public setting. Evelyn's journals lay scattered between us, a bridge of shared fascination. Lila, Nora said, her voice soft. "I'm really glad you walked into my shop." "Me too." She reached across the table, covering my hand with hers. The simple touch warmed me. "I wasn't looking for this," I admitted. "For you, for any of it. Best things happen when we're not looking." I studied her face in the soft light, memorizing the slight curve of her mouth, the way her auburn hair caught the glow. "Kiss me," I whispered. She leaned across the journals, her lips meeting mine. The kiss tasted of possibility, soft but urgent. When we parted, I was breathless. "We're making out in a historical society," I said, half laughing. "Very proper. Oh, this is just the start of improper." Nora teased, standing and moving to my side of the table. She settled beside me on the bench, kissing me again, her hand tangling in my hair. My hands found her waist, the emergency lighting creating a cocoon around us. We were alone in this vast building, surrounded by decades of history, lost in each other. "Should we find somewhere more comfortable?" she murmured against my neck. "How comfortable can we get here? Let me show you." She led me to a cushioned reading chair in a shadowed corner, away from the main lights. What followed unfolded slowly, quietly, the silence amplifying every sound. Her hands explored with the same care she gave her bow-making reading. My responses, like Evelyn's journals, described reading wind. The intimacy was unlike anything I'd known, profound in its simplicity. When we separated, only 30 minutes had passed, though it felt like hours. We gathered Evelyn's journals, returning them to their boxes with care. Walking through the darkened library to the emergency exit, Nora took my hand. "That wasn't in Evelyn's mindfulness techniques," she said, grinning. "Should be." The exit alarm chirped as we left, a soft sound like the building's approval. Outside, Lincoln Street stretched quiet under streetlights. "Your place?" Nora asked at our cars. "Definitely." Driving through the cool autumn air, windows down, I felt a shift. This wasn't curiosity or a phase. This was falling in love, eyes wide open, and it didn't scare me. At my apartment, we continued where the library left off, the small space feeling warmer with Nora in it. Her presence filled the gaps Ethan's absence had left, not replacing him, but creating something entirely new. The next morning, I woke in my bed, Nora's auburn hair spread across the pillow. Morning, she mumbled, eyes still closed. Good morning, regrets, none. We made coffee, moving around my tiny kitchen with the ease of people who'd been doing this for years. Over toast, we planned to test the Evelyn Reed bow again, but the conversation drifted to our future hypothetical weekends away, maybe a joint coaching clinic. Everything felt possible. Want to hit the farmer's market today? Nora asked. Fresh produce, maybe some local art. Let's do it. The Lincoln Farmer's Market buzzed with vendors selling apples, pottery, and homemade jams. We wandered hand in hand, a quiet declaration of togetherness. At a woodworking booth, I spotted a carved arrow rest, perfect for the Evelyn Reed bow. For our collection, I said, buying it before Nora could protest. She laughed, kissing my cheek. Our collection's growing fast. That afternoon, back at Nora's barn, we shot the Evelyn Reed bow, its vintage limbs singing with each release. You're steadier today, Nora observed, retrieving arrows. Something settled in you. Mia said something at practice, I admitted. Asked if I was happy, said I seemed different, lighter. Smart kid, what did you tell her? Nothing specific, but it made me think. I'm not hiding this us, but we haven't talked about what being open looks like. Nora set down her bow, her expression serious. Are we hiding? Not on purpose? But I want people to know you're mine. To introduce you at school events, hold your hand in public, deal with whatever comes. Are you sure? Once it's out there, no taking it back. I'm sure. She stepped closer, cupping my face. Good, because I'm tired of pretending you're just a coach when you stop by the shop. We spent the next hour shooting, but the conversation had changed something. We weren't just exploring anymore. We were building something public, permanent. Later at her house, Nora poured wine as I flipped through an archery magazine. I have an idea, she said, settling beside me. The Omaha Archery Expo is next month. Big event, coaches, gear makers, the works. What if we went together officially as a couple, as partners? The idea thrilled and unnerved me, a public debut away from Lincoln, a chance to practice being us without local scrutiny. I love it, I said. Neutral ground, shared passion, built-in conversation. She grinned. Plus hotel room, also important. We planned the trip over dinner, mapping out booth visits and workshops, the logistics of traveling together, feeling like a promise. In her bedroom that night, her touch was fierce, claiming as if sealing our decision. Afterward, lying tangled together, she whispered, No more hiding. No more hiding, I echoed. Even when it's messy, especially then. The next morning, I woke feeling anchored, more myself than ever. Watching Nora sleep. Her hair catching the dawn light, I knew this was my life now, not a rebound, not an experiment. This was who I was meant to be. Over coffee, we booked flights to Omaha and reserved a hotel room with one bed. No turning back. Nora said, sealing the confirmation envelope. Good, I'm done looking back. Outside, autumn leaves fell like confetti, marking a new season. Change was coming, and I wasn't afraid. But shadows from my past weren't done with me. That afternoon, my phone rang, the number sending a chill through me. Ethan, Lila, it's me, he said. His voice unchanged, pulling me back to 16 years of arguments and silences. I was chopping vegetables for dinner at my apartment, Nora due in an hour. What do you want? To talk. Can we meet? We have nothing to discuss. Please, one conversation. There are things I need to say. Against my better judgment, I agreed to coffee Saturday morning at Brewed Awakening, a neutral spot with easy exits. I texted Nora immediately. Ethan wants to meet tomorrow. Coffee at 10. Her reply was swift. Want me there? No, I need to do this alone. Call me after. Anxiety gnawed at me, but Nora's steady presence, even through text, kept me grounded. Saturday dawned, gray rain misting the streets. I arrived at Brewed Awakening early, claiming a table near the back with a clear view of the door. Ethan walked in on time, scanning the cafe until he saw me. 4 months had aged him, his broad shoulders slumped, his face lined with something like regret. Thanks for coming, he said. Sitting across from me. You have 15 minutes. He ordered an Americano, stalling. I studied him, surprised to feel only curiosity. No lingering ache. You look good, Lila. Really good. Get to the point. I made mistakes. Big ones. I've been seeing a counselor, trying to figure out where we went wrong. Where we went wrong? You resented me for growing while you stayed stuck. I know. He leaned forward, earnest in a way I remembered from our early days. That's what Dr. Larson helped me see. I was so angry about my knee, about losing track, that I couldn't handle your success. But I'm different now. I want to try again. I want us to reconcile. The words hit like a misfired arrow, sharp and off target. My coffee mug froze halfway to my lips. Excuse me, I want to give our marriage another chance. His sincerity was almost convincing, as if 4 months could erase 16 years of resentment. Ethan, we're divorced. Papers signed, done. We can fix papers. No, we can't. Why not? What's changed? Are you seeing someone? The question landed with precision, striking every nerve. Was I seeing Nora, dating her, in love with her? That's not your business anymore. It is if you're making decisions based on a fling. Heat flared in my chest. Don't you dare call it that. I'm not judging. I'm saying you might be running from our problems instead of fixing them. His therapy speak grated less honest than his old anger. Our problems. Your bitterness, your refusal to support my coaching, your need to control every choice I made. I take responsibility for all of it, he said, voice breaking. You won't even consider trying again. Ethan, I've built a life without you. A good one. With myself, and yes, with someone else. Who is he? The assumption made me laugh, bitter and sharp. Not everything's about replacing you with another man. Then who? I could have deflected, but some defiant part of me wanted him to understand how far I'd moved on. Her name's Nora. His face cycled through shock, confusion, then something like realization. You're with a woman. I'm in love with a woman. The words slipped out before I could stop them, raw and true. I hadn't said them to Nora yet, hadn't fully admitted them to myself, but facing Ethan defending this life I'd built made it undeniable. That's not you, Lila. You're not what gay bisexual labels don't matter. She makes me happy in ways you never did. He sat back, stunned. My counselor warned me about this experimental stuff after big changes. Don't you dare psychoanalyze me. This isn't an experiment. It's real. Is it? Or are you just scared of commitment after us? I'm done. I stood, but Ethan grabbed my wrist, not hard, but enough to pause me. Please think about it. We had good years before it fell apart. That means something. We had 4 good years and 12 of slow decay. Let go. He released me, his face crumpling with regret. I love you, Lila. Always will. I know. And I'll always care about you. But we're done. Because of me, because I know what happiness is now. And it's not what we had. I left him at the table, the cafe's chatter fading as I walked to my car through the drizzle. I called Nora immediately. How'd it go? She asked, voice steady. He wants to reconcile. Silence then. What'd you tell him? That I'm in love with someone else. Are you? Yes. Completely, terrifyingly in love. Her laughter warmed me through the phone. With who? You, Nora Quinn. Stupidly in love with you. Good, because I'm stupidly in love with you too. Driving to Nora's house, the rain-soaked streets blurring past, I realized Ethan's reappearance hadn't shaken me. It had clarified everything. I wasn't running from my past. I was claiming my future. At her door, still in pajamas at noon, Nora pulled me into a kiss that tasted of coffee and certainty. I love you, I said against her lips. I love you too, she replied, drawing me inside where everything made sense. Ethan could keep his revelations. I was building something new, and I chose Nora every time. Ethan's attempt to pull me back lingered like a bad aftertaste for days, but it didn't shake my resolve. It sharpened it. Nora noticed my quieter moments, but gave me space, her presence a steady anchor. Tuesday after practice, Mia approached me, her usual confidence replaced with something serious. Coach Lila, can I ask something personal? She said, adjusting her quiver. Go ahead. Are you happy? The question caught me off guard. Mia, at 15, had a knack for cutting through pretense. What makes you ask? My aunt's getting divorced. Keeps asking if I'm okay, like my answer changes her decision. But you seem happy, like really happy, not faking it. I studied her, this kid who saw more than most. You're right, I am happy. Because of the woman you're dating, I froze. How'd you coach you glow when your phone pings? Plus, Ethan stopped by last week asking about you. Protective instincts flared. What did he want? Just if you seemed okay if you were eating. Ex-husband stuff. I told him you were killing it. She shouldered her bag. Said whoever makes you smile like that must be special. Mia's words stayed with me. My students had seen me unravel during the divorce, watched me rebuild piece by piece. They deserved to see the full version of me, not a half-hidden one. That evening, Nora and I tested the Evelyn Reed bow at her barn. its vintage limbs humming with each shot. "You're different tonight," she observed, collecting arrows. "More focused." Mia said something, asked if I was happy because of you. Made me realize we're still keeping this us quiet. Nora set her bow down, her hazel eyes steady. "Are we not intentionally? But I want to be open, introduce you to my kids' parents, take you to school events, not care who stares." "You sure it's a big step?" "I'm sure. I'm tired of acting like you're just a friend when you're so much more." We shot for another hour, but the conversation had shifted something fundamental. We weren't just a couple in private anymore. We were choosing to be seen. At Nora's house later, she poured wine, while I skimmed an archery journal on her coffee table. "The Omaha Archery Expo's coming up," she said, sitting close. "What if we make it our debut go as partners? Personal and professional." The idea sparked excitement, a chance to be us in a new space, surrounded by our shared passion. "I love it," I said. "A test run away from Lincoln's gossip." She grinned. "Plus, we get a hotel room. Very important." We planned over dinner, mapping out seminars and vendor booths, the act of organizing our first trip together, feeling like a vow. In her bedroom that night, her touch was fierce, yet tender, as if claiming this new chapter. "No more hiding," she whispered afterward, her fingers tracing my spine. "No more hiding," I agreed, even when it's hard. Especially then. Wednesday morning, I woke in Nora's bed, her auburn hair catching the dawn light. This was my life now, not a detour, but a destination. Over coffee, we booked flights to Omaha and a hotel room with one king bed. No going back. Nora said, sealing the confirmation. "Good, I'm all in." But being all in meant facing the world. And the world had opinions. Thursday at practice, I overheard two parents whispering near the bleachers. "Heard Lila's dating a woman now," one said. "Wonder how that'll affect the team." I straightened, pretending not to hear, but my stomach twisted. Mia caught my eye, giving a subtle nod like she knew. I focused on coaching, but the whispers followed me home. I told Nora over dinner at my place, expecting her to brush it off. Instead, she set down her fork, serious. "This is what we signed up for. People talk. Doesn't mean they're right. I know, just..." Didn't expect it to sting. She reached for my hand. "We'll face it together, always." The Omaha Expo was 3 weeks away, and we threw ourselves into preparing. Nora worked late at True Aim Archery, crafting demo bows, while I drilled my students harder, determined to prove the whispers wrong. Mia's shooting improved daily, her focus inspiring the others. "You're on fire," I told her after a perfect round. "Learned from you, coach." Her grin reminded me why I loved this job. At night, Nora and I studied Evelyn Reed's journals, her mindfulness techniques sinking in. "Focus on the shot, not the score," she wrote. I applied it to life. Focus on Nora, on us, not the noise. The Friday before the expo, I got a call from Ethan's sister, Claire. "Lila, can we talk?" she asked, voice hesitant. "Ethan's struggling. He told me about your meeting." I sighed, stirring soup in my kitchen. "Claire, there's nothing to say. We're done. He thinks you're confused, that this woman's a phase." Anger flared, but I kept my tone even. "Nora's not a phase. She's my future." Silence then. "I just want you to be sure. You've been through a lot, I'm sure. Tell Ethan to move on." Hanging up, I felt a mix of relief and guilt. Nora arrived minutes later, sensing my mood. "You okay?" Claire called. "Thinks I'm having a crisis." Nora pulled me close. "You're not. You're building something real. They'll see it eventually." Her certainty steadied me, and we spent the night planning our expo schedule, pushing the past aside. The Omaha Archery Expo was held in a sprawling convention center, buzzing with coaches, athletes, and gear makers. Nora and I arrived hand in hand, our first public outing as a couple. The air smelled of polished wood and leather, and booths displayed everything from carbon arrows to custom quivers. We wore matching True Aim archery shirts, Nora's idea to brand us as a team. "Ready for this?" she asked, squeezing my hand. "Ready." We visited vendors, discussing bow designs with craftsmen who nodded approvingly at Nora's expertise. At a coaching seminar, I shared tips from Evelyn Reed's journals, earning murmurs of interest. Between sessions, we stole moments in quiet corners, her lips brushing mine, the thrill of being open electrifying. Not everyone was welcoming. A vendor from Kansas gave us a sidelong glance when Nora introduced me as her partner, and a coach from Iowa avoided our booth after hearing we were together. But for every cold shoulder, there were warm welcomes. A women's archery team from Minnesota invited us to their next clinic, and a bowyer from Colorado swapped stories with Nora, about handcrafted limbs. See, she whispered during a break. The good ones outweigh the bad. That night in our hotel room, we collapsed onto the king bed, laughing about the day's highlights. You were amazing out there, Nora said, pulling me close. So were you. Our kisses deepened the freedom of being ourselves, fueling every touch. For the first time, I felt fully seen, not as Ethan's ex, not as Coach Lila, but as me, Nora's partner. Back in Lincoln, the expo's glow carried us. We started integrating our lives more openly. Nora visited practice, helping tune my students' bows, and I introduced her to parents as my partner. Most were supportive, some hesitant, but Mia and her teammates cheered us on. Coach, you guys are goals, she said, making us laugh. We lost a few students, too. Parents pulled their kids, citing personal values, but new ones joined, drawn by our growing reputation. Nora's shop saw more traffic, too, as word spread about her custom work. We were building something not just as a couple, but as a team. One evening, while testing the Evelyn Reed bow at the barn, Nora turned to me, her expression soft. I want to do something big with you, bigger than the expo. Yeah. What if we started a youth archery program together? Combine your coaching with my gear. Make it accessible for kids who can't afford fancy setups. The idea lit me up. I'm in. Let's do it. We spent the night sketching plans, envisioning a program that could change lives. Later, as we lay in her bed, her arms around me, she whispered, Promise me something, anything. If Ethan or anyone tries to make you doubt this, remember tonight. Remember us. I promise, I said, kissing her. This is real. But doubts have a way of creeping in. A week later, I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, a single page in Ethan's handwriting, Yila. I can't stop thinking about you. I'm better now for you. Please, one more chance. My stomach dropped. I hadn't told Nora about the call from Claire, not wanting to burden her, but this felt different, deliberate, invasive. I drove to Nora's, the letter burning a hole in my bag. Ethan sent this, I said, handing it to her. She read it, her jaw tightening. He's not letting go. He has to. I'm done. She pulled me into a hug. I know, but he's not your problem anymore. We've got this. Her strength grounded me, but as I lay awake that night, Ethan's words echoed. Not because I believed them, but because they reminded me how hard I'd fought to get here. I wasn't going back. The youth program idea took shape, keeping us busy. We scouted locations, drafted budgets, and reached out to local schools. Mia volunteered to help, her enthusiasm infectious. This is going to be huge, Coach, she said, designing flyers. Nora and I worked late, our shared vision binding us closer. One night, as we reviewed grant applications at her kitchen table, she looked up, smiling. We're really doing this, aren't we? Yeah, I said, leaning across to kiss her. And it's perfect, but perfection is fragile. At practice the next day, a parent approached me, her face tight. Lila, I heard about your relationship. I'm not sure it's appropriate for you to coach my son. I took a breath, channeling Evelyn Reed's calm. My personal life doesn't affect my coaching. Your son's shooting better than ever. Let's focus on that. She hesitated, then nodded, but her unease lingered. I told Nora later, expecting frustration. Instead, she laughed. They'll come around, or they won't. Either way, we're not stopping. Her resilience was my anchor, and I knew no matter what came, we'd face it together. The parents' hesitation at practice stuck with me, a reminder that being open about Nora and me came with a cost. But for every skeptical glance, there were moments that made it worth it, like Mia's grin when she nailed a bullseye, or the way Nora's hand found mine during a quiet moment at her shop. Ethan's letter, though, was a splinter I couldn't ignore. I hadn't responded, but its presence in my apartment felt like a challenge to the life I was building. Nora sensed my unease, but didn't push her quiet support, giving me room to process. Whenever you're ready to talk about it, she said one evening, her hazel eyes steady over a glass of wine. I'm here. I nodded, grateful, but the words stayed locked inside. Our youth archery program was gaining momentum, keeping us busy. We named it Arrow Forward, a nod to Evelyn Reed's philosophy of trusting the shot over the score. Mia designed a logo, a sleek arrow piercing a rising sun, and we secured a grant from a local foundation to cover startup costs. Nora worked late at True Aim Archery, crafting affordable bows for kids, while I scouted community centers for a practice space. One night, as we reviewed floor plans at my apartment, Nora leaned back, her auburn braid loosening. This is real, isn't it? We're changing things. Yeah, I said, kissing her forehead. And it's because of you. She laughed, pulling me close. Team effort, Lila. Practice with my high school team kept me grounded. Mia was a standout, her focus sharper than ever, but the other kids were stepping up too. Coach, you're different lately, one of them, Jake said after a session. Like happier. Good different, I hope. Definitely. Their acceptance meant more than I expected, especially after losing those 2 students. But new kids joined, some, drawn by rumors of our program, others by Mia's glowing reviews. You and Nora are like archery superheroes, she teased, making me laugh. The whispers from parents hadn't stopped, but they were quieter now, drowned out by the team's progress. The Omaha Archery Expo had lit a fire in us, and we leaned into our partnership. Nora started visiting practice regularly, tuning bows and offering tips. The kids loved her, especially Mia, who peppered her with questions about fletching. I introduced Nora to more parents bracing for pushback, but most were warm, curious about her shop. You two make a great team, one mom said, and I felt a surge of pride. We were proving ourselves not just as a couple, but as professionals. Still, Ethan's letter haunted me. I hadn't told Nora about the guilt it stirred, not for wanting him back, but for the years I'd spent trying to fix something broken. One evening, as we shot the Evelyn Reed bow at her barn, I finally opened up. Ethan's letter, it's messing with me, I admitted, retrieving arrows. Not because I doubt us, but because it reminds me how long I stayed in something that wasn't right. Nora set her bow down, her expression soft. That's not your fault, Lila. You were trying to make it work. I know, but I wasted so much time. She stepped closer, cupping my face. You're here now. That's what matters. Her kiss erased the lingering shadows, and I let the guilt slip away. We poured our energy into Arrow Forward. We found a space at community center with an indoor range and scheduled our first session for early spring. Mia volunteered to assist, her enthusiasm infectious. This is going to be huge, Coach, she said, stuffing flyers into her backpack. Nora and I spent weekends building a curriculum, blending my coaching techniques with her gear knowledge. One night, as we worked at her kitchen table, she looked up, her hazel eyes gleaming. What if we invited Evelyn Reed's daughter to the launch? She's still in Nebraska, runs a bookstore in Omaha. The idea thrilled me. Let's do it. Make it a tribute. We tracked down Margaret Reed, who was touched by our plan. Mom would have loved this, she said over the phone. Count me in. But not everyone was on board. At a parent meeting for the high school team, one dad, Mr. Carson, pulled me aside. Lila, I'm concerned about your lifestyle influencing the kids. His tone was polite but pointed. I took a breath, channeling Evelyn's calm. My personal life doesn't change how I coach. Your daughter's scores are up 15% this season. That's what matters. He frowned but didn't argue, walking away with a curt nod. I told Nora later, expecting her to bristle. Instead, she shrugged. He's one guy. Most parents love you. Focus on them. Her pragmatism steadied me, but the encounter left a mark. I wasn't just fighting for my team. I was fighting for the right to be myself. The next week, I got another letter from Ethan. This one was shorter, more desperate. Lila, I'm not giving up. I know we can fix this. Please call. I tore it up, but my hands shook. Nora was at the shop when I drove over, needing her calm. Another letter, I said, showing her the pieces. Her jaw tightened. He's crossing a line. I know. I just don't know how to make him stop. She pulled me into a hug, her cedar scent grounding me. You don't have to do this alone. We'll figure it out. That night, we drafted a response together, firm, final, asking him to respect my boundaries. I mailed it the next day, feeling lighter, but not naive. Ethan wasn't done, but I was. Arrow Forward's launch loomed, and we threw ourselves into preparations. Nora crafted a dozen beginner bows, each fletched with bright feathers to excite the kids. I trained Mia and 2 other students as assistant coaches, their energy infectious. The community center buzzed with set-up targets, safety nets, a banner with our logo. Margaret Reed arrived early, a warm woman in her 60s with her mother's sharp eyes. This is exactly what Mom believed in, she said, holding the Evelyn Reed bow. Archery for everyone. The first session was a hit, 20 kids ages 8 to 14 giggling as they knocked their first arrows. Nora and I moved among them, adjusting grips, praising efforts. Mia shone her patience, surprising me. You're a natural, I told her. Learn from you, Coach. Kaz. That night, Nora and I celebrated at her house, toasting with local cider. We did it, she said, her smile radiant. Our first step. Not just a step, I said, kissing her. A leap. In her bedroom, our connection felt deeper, each touch a reaffirmation of our shared path. Promise me something, she murmured, her fingers tracing my collarbone. If Ethan keeps pushing, or if anyone makes you question this, remember today. The kids the program us. I promise, I said, meaning it. The world could throw what it wanted. We were unbreakable. But the world doesn't rest. A week later, I was locking up the community center after practice when Ethan appeared in the parking lot leaning against his truck. My heart sank. Lila, we need to talk, he said, stepping forward. There's nothing to say, Ethan. You got my letter. I did. But I don't believe you're done with us. His voice was calm, but his eyes were desperate. I'm not confused, Ethan. I'm happy with Nora. You need to let this go. He stepped closer, not threatening, but too close. You're throwing away 16 years for something that won't last. Anger flared, but I kept my voice steady. You don't get to decide what lasts. Go home. I got in my car, hands shaking as I drove to Nora's. She was at her workbench when I arrived, sawdust in her hair. Ethan showed up, I said, voice breaking. She set her tools down, pulling me close. You okay? Yeah, just rattled. He's losing his grip, Lila. He'll stop eventually. I nodded, but doubt crept in, not about Nora, but about how far Ethan might go. The next day I filed a report with the police, just to document the encounter. They suggested a no-contact order if it escalated, and I hoped it wouldn't come to that. Nora and I doubled down on Arrow Forward, letting the program's success drown out the noise. We added a second weekly session, and more kids signed up, some from low-income families thanks to our grant. Margaret Reed sent us a box of her mother's old coaching notes, a treasure trove of wisdom we incorporated into our lessons. Mia started calling us the archery power couple, making us laugh. You guys are unstoppable, she said, and I started to believe it. One evening, as we shot at the barn, Nora handed me a new arrow. It's fletching a deep teal and gold Arrow Forward's colors. Made this for you, she said. A reminder of what we're building. I knocked at the Evelyn Reed bow, steady in my hands. The arrow hit dead center, and Nora's grin lit up the barn. Perfect shot, she said, kissing me. Perfect life, I replied, meaning every word. Ethan's shadow lingered, but it was fading. Nora and I were aiming forward, and nothing could pull us back. Ethan's parking lot confrontation left a bruise on my confidence, but Nora's steady presence and Arrow Forward's success kept me moving forward. The police report gave me a sense of control, though I hoped it wouldn't escalate further. Nora and I leaned harder into our work, letting the rhythm of coaching, crafting, and planning drown out the echoes of my past. Mia noticed my tension, but didn't pry, instead, throwing herself into Arrow Forward with a passion that reminded me of myself at her age. You and Nora are killing it, she said after a session, her grin wide. This program's gonna change lives. Her faith in us was a balm, and I clung to it as we prepped for our second month of classes. True Aim Archery was thriving too. Nora's custom bows drew customers from across Nebraska, and our partnership, professional and personal, became a quiet selling point. Parents from the high school team started visiting the shop, curious about the woman who'd won their coach's heart. Most were supportive, some hesitant, but Nora's easy charm won them over. You've got a keeper, one dad told me, clapping my shoulder after buying a quiver for his son. I smiled, pride swelling. I know. We were building more than a program or a business, we were building a life, and it felt unshakable. But Ethan wasn't done. A week after the parking lot incident, I found a voicemail from him left at midnight. Lila, I'm sorry about showing up like that. I just need you to hear me out. Call me, please. I deleted it. My hands shaking, and told Nora over breakfast at her house. She set her coffee down, her hazel eyes narrowing. He's not respecting your boundaries. Maybe it's time for that no-contact order. I don't want to escalate things, I said, stirring my oatmeal. Not yet. She reached for my hand. Okay, but you don't have to face this alone. We're in this together. Her words steadied me, and I decided to ignore Ethan, hoping silence would finally make him stop. Arrow Forward's second session was even better than the first. 30 kids now, their laughter filling the community center as they learned to knock arrows and aim true. Margaret Reed visited again, bringing old photos of her mother competing in the 1950s. You're carrying her legacy, she told us, her eyes misty. Nora and I exchanged a look, pride swelling. After the session, Mia stayed to help clean up, her usual chatter subdued. Coach, can I ask you something? Always. How'd you know Nora was the one? The question caught me off guard, but her earnestness deserved honesty. She makes me feel like I'm enough just as I am, and we're better together than apart. Mia nodded, thoughtful. That's what I want someday. You'll find it, I said, ruffling her hair. She grinned back to her usual self. That evening, Nora and I tested the Evelyn Reed bow at her barn, the autumn air crisp through the open windows. The teal and gold arrow she'd made for me flew true, splitting the bullseye. You're shooting like Evelyn herself, Nora teased, retrieving it. It's the bow, I said, but her smile suggested otherwise. We shot for an hour, the rhythm of draw, aim, release grounding me. Afterward, as we packed up, Nora turned to me, her expression serious. I've been thinking about something big. Bigger than arrow forward. Yeah. She took my hand, leading me to the workbench where the Evelyn Reed bow rested. I want to make this permanent. My heart skipped. What are you saying? She reached into her pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Lila Harper. You've shown me what love looks like when two people aim for the same target. Will you marry me? I froze, the barn's golden light blurring through sudden tears. She opened the box, revealing a simple silver band with a tiny arrow etched into it. You're proposing here, I laughed, voice shaking. Seemed right. This is where it started. I dropped to my knees beside her, framing her face. Yes, Nora Quinn. Obviously, yes. Her smile was radiant as she slid the ring onto my finger, a perfect fit. We kissed deep and unhurried, the world fading around us. I have something for you too, I said, standing. I'd been carrying it for days, waiting for the right moment. From my bag I pulled a wrapped package, a leather quiver hand-stitched with our initials and the date we met. Made it with a local craftsman, I admitted. Was going to give it at Christmas, but this is better. She ran her fingers over the stitching, eyes shining. It's perfect. We spent the next hour shooting the ring, catching the light with each draw. Nothing felt different, yet everything did. We'd been partners for months, but this was a vow to the world. Where do you want the ceremony? Nora asked, retrieving arrows. Here, I said, gesturing to the barn. It's us. Plenty of space for everyone we love, she agreed, kissing me. Very us. Driving home, the ring a new weight on my finger, I marveled at how far I'd come. 6 months ago, I was signing divorce papers, staring at a future I couldn't imagine. Now I was engaged to a woman who made every day brighter. The next morning, we told Mia at practice. No way, she squealed, hugging us both. You guys are going to be the coolest wives. Her excitement was contagious, and the other kids chimed in, asking about the wedding. We kept it simple, a spring ceremony at the barn, small but meaningful. News spread fast in Lincoln, and reactions were mixed. Most parents congratulated us, but Mr. Carson emailed, pulling his daughter from the team, citing moral concerns. It stung, but Nora shrugged it off. His loss. We've got plenty who support us. She was right. New students signed up, and Arrow Forward's waitlist grew. We were proving ourselves one shot at a time. Planning the wedding became our new project. Over coffee at Nora's, we sketched guest lists and menus, debating wildflowers versus roses. I want it simple, I said, leaning against her. Just us, our people, and good food. And archery, she added, grinning. Maybe a friendly tournament, I laughed, loving her. We booked a local caterer and a folk band, keeping the vibe relaxed. Mia insisted on helping designing invitations with our Arrow Forward logo. You're hired, Nora teased, and Mia beamed. Margaret Reed offered to bring Evelyn's old competition medals for display, a nod to the legacy we carried. But Ethan's shadow loomed. 2 weeks after the proposal, I got a text from an unknown number. Lila, it's Ethan. New phone. I heard you're engaged. We need to talk. My stomach dropped. I showed Nora, expecting anger, but she stayed calm. Block him. He's grasping at straws. I did. But unease settled in. The next day, a bouquet of roses arrived at my apartment with a card. Congratulations, Lila. I still love you. E. I threw them out, but my hands shook. He's not stopping, I told Nora, voice tight. She pulled me close. We'll get that no-contact order if he keeps this up. He can't touch what we have. We filed for the order the next morning, the process draining but necessary. The police warned Ethan to stay away, and for the first time in weeks I breathed easier. Arrow Forward kept us focused. We added a mentorship program pairing older students like Mia with younger ones. The kids thrived, their confidence growing with each shot. One evening as we cleaned up the community center, Mia approached me. Coach, I told my mom about your engagement. She says you're brave. Brave, yeah, for being you, no matter what people say. Her words hit deep and I hugged her. Thanks, Mia. That means a lot. Later at Nora's, I shared the moment, my voice catching. We're doing something right, Nora said, kissing my temple. Not just for the kids, but for us. The barn became our planning hub, its walls echoing with laughter as we tested decorations and shot the Evelyn Reed bow. One night, Nora handed me a new arrow fletched in silver to match my ring. For the wedding, she said. Our first shot as wives. I knocked at the bow steady and let it fly dead center. Perfect, she murmured, her arms around me. Like us. I turned, kissing her, the ring glinting in the barn's soft light. Ethan's attempts to pull me back were fading irrelevant against the life we were building. We were unstoppable, our aim true.